Elias Kane walked slowly across the rocky plateau, the dust crunching under his boots. The twin suns of the distant system beat down on the metal hulls of the abandoned mining colony. Most of the crew had left days ago, seeking safer worlds, but Elias had stayed behind. There was work to do, machines to repair, and a strange sense of duty he could not ignore. Alone, he felt the vast emptiness of the planet pressing on him. Silence was everywhere, broken only by the occasional whistling wind that carried grains of red dust. He turned toward a narrow canyon where a collapsed tunnel had blocked the old mining path. His scanner had picked up faint heat signatures, but he had assumed it was some malfunction in the sensors. As he approached, he noticed something strange, a flicker of movement in the dust. He stopped, squinting against the sunlight reflecting off his helmet visor. Then he saw it. A small shape, no bigger than a child, struggling among the rocks. Its scales shimmered in soft shades of gold and green, catching the light like tiny mirrors. Two glowing eyes stared at him with an intensity that made him step back. Elias froze, unsure if it was real. He had read stories about dragons in old galactic texts, tales that scientists called myths. Yet here, under the twin suns, a real, living hatchling was staring at him. The hatchling let out a tiny, pained cry, and Elias felt a sharp tug at his chest. Despite the alien planet and the long odds, something inside him stirred, a mix of fear, wonder, and responsibility. He knelt carefully, keeping his hands visible. The hatchling shivered, its tiny wings quivering as if it wanted to fly but could not. Its body was bruised, its scales scratched from the rocks. Elias slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a small water container. "Easy," he whispered, more to himself than to the creature. He poured a few drops near the hatchling. It sniffed the water, but did not drink. Instead, it inched closer, wobbling on delicate legs. Elias noticed how fragile it looked, how tiny yet determined it was to survive. The wind blew harder, lifting dust into swirling clouds. Elias shielded the hatchling with his jacket, keeping it out of the harsh wind. For a long moment, neither spoke, neither moved. He could feel its small heartbeat through the thin armor of his gloves. Something in him clicked, he was not alone on this planet anymore. He had found something that needed him, and maybe, in return, it could trust him. Elias looked around. There was nothing for miles but jagged cliffs and abandoned machinery. The colony was quiet, empty, lifeless. Yet in that emptiness, the hatchling was alive, fighting, refusing to give up. He could not just leave it there to die. The human in him, the part that refused to abandon anyone, even a creature he barely understood, kicked in. He carefully scooped the hatchling into his arms. Its small claws dug lightly into his jacket, and its warm body pressed against him. He noticed a faint glow along its back, pulsing softly, like a heartbeat of light. The hatchling was weak, but it was alive. Elias felt a rush of pride and awe, mixed with anxiety. How had such a creature survived here, on this harsh, forgotten planet? And why did it seem to trust him already, as if it had chosen him from the start? Elias began walking back to the colony's central hub, careful not to jostle the hatchling. Every step was cautious, but he could feel it pressing closer to him, curling slightly in his arms. It made little noises, soft huffs and squeaks that sounded almost like sighs. He found himself talking to it as he walked. "I'll get you cleaned up. We'll find food. You'll be safe here." The hatchling blinked slowly at him, and Elias swore he saw recognition in its glowing eyes. Inside the old hub, Elias set the hatchling down gently on a padded table he had prepared for machine parts. He found an old blanket and wrapped the creature carefully, giving it warmth. It looked up at him, unafraid, even climbing a little onto his hands when he reached for a cup of water. Its tiny claws tapped against his gloves, and he laughed quietly. "This is going to be a long morning," Elias muttered. The hatchling tilted its head, almost as if it understood. Elias realized, with a mix of surprise and fear, that his life had just changed. He was no longer alone on this desolate world. He had a companion, fragile, extraordinary, and entirely dependent on him. For the first time since the crew had left, Elias felt purpose beyond survival. He felt needed. He felt alive. The hatchling, in its small, quiet way, had claimed him as much as he had saved it. And as he watched it curl up, breathing softly under the thin blanket, he knew that nothing on this planet, or in this galaxy, would be the same again. The twin suns climbed higher, painting the hub in golden light. And in that quiet, glowing moment, human courage and the spark of something truly extraordinary began to grow between a man and a dragon hatchling. Elias carefully packed the hatchling into a small crate he had reinforced with pieces of scrap metal. He wanted it safe while he went to check the colony's generators. The hatchling, however, had other plans. As soon as he stepped outside, the little creature wriggled free and scampered after him, its tiny legs moving faster than he expected. Elias froze and watched as it kept up with him across the rocky ground, determination in its glowing eyes. He stopped and crouched. "You're coming with me?" he asked softly. The hatchling let out a small squeak, hopping onto a jagged rock to keep pace. Elias chuckled. "All right. I guess I can't just leave you behind." He felt a strange warmth in his chest, a mix of pride and surprise. No human had ever seen a dragon hatchling on this planet. Yet here it was, trusting him completely. The morning air was thin and dry, carrying the scent of dust and metal. Elias moved carefully over the uneven terrain, checking sensors and repairing the solar panels that powered the colony. The hatchling stayed at his feet, occasionally climbing onto his boots or nudging his hands with its tiny snout. Each time it did, Elias felt a surge of responsibility. This little creature depended on him completely, and he could not let it down. By mid-morning, Elias noticed that the hatchling was curious, constantly exploring. It sniffed at cables, peered into crates, and tried to climb the walls of the hub. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "I hope you don't break anything," he said. The hatchling blinked at him, and he swore it looked like it understood. It tapped the ground with its claws and let out a soft hiss, then waddled back to him when he called. Elias realized it was learning, observing him, and responding in ways that made him think it was smarter than any animal he had ever known. As they moved to the generator area, Elias noticed faint tracks in the dust. Small claw marks, leading from the canyon to where he now walked. He crouched to examine them, running his fingers along the ridges. "You've been here longer than I thought," he said softly. The hatchling nudged his hand with its tiny head, almost as if agreeing. The realization hit him: this little dragon had survived alone in this harsh place for who knew how long. It had scavenged, hidden, and endured the dangers of a planet that had already claimed countless lives. Elias worked quickly on the generator, tightening bolts and connecting wires. The hatchling watched, tilting its head and occasionally chirping. When he moved to grab a tool, the creature followed, pawing at it curiously. Elias smiled. "You're a clever one, aren't you?" he said. The hatchling blinked and made a soft clicking sound, and Elias felt a strange bond growing. It was more than survival now, it was trust, and perhaps something like friendship. Hours passed quickly. The hatchling stayed close, refusing to leave Elias's side. At one point, he tried to put it back in the crate, thinking it needed rest. But the hatchling scrambled out instantly, hopping onto his shoulder. Elias froze, startled at first, then laughed softly. All right. You're coming with me," he said, his voice gentle but firm. It was clear the creature had chosen him, not the crate or the hub or the food he could give it. It had chosen him, and somehow, that choice carried weight. By late morning, the sun was high in the sky, and the colony hummed with quiet energy. Elias stopped to take a breath and wiped the sweat from his brow. The hatchling curled around his boots, purring softly, a strange sound, not like any cat or dog, more like the hum of a small engine. Elias crouched down and looked into its glowing eyes. He felt awe, pride, and a sharp edge of fear. This creature, so small and fragile, was magnificent. And it depended entirely on him. As he straightened and prepared to check the final solar panel on the far edge of the plateau, a shadow moved across the rocks. Elias turned quickly. The hatchling stiffened, hissing softly, wings trembling. He followed its gaze and saw the faint glint of metal in the distance, a scavenger drone, likely sent by another colony or a rogue explorer. Elias's heart raced. He could not let it see the hatchling. Not yet. Not when it had just begun to trust him. He picked up the hatchling gently, pressing it against his chest, feeling its warmth. The little dragon relaxed slightly, but its claws dug lightly into his jacket. Elias whispered, "Don't worry. I've got you." He began moving quickly, yet carefully, toward a rock formation that would hide them. Each step was deliberate, but the hatchling seemed to sense his determination. It pressed closer, nudging his hand as if offering reassurance. For the rest of the morning, they moved together. The hatchling learned quickly, following commands Elias hadn't even spoken aloud. It climbed on rocks when he gestured, stayed hidden when he crouched behind shadows, and even made little warning noises when it sensed movement. Elias felt something deep inside him, pride, awe, and a sharp clarity that humans could survive, adapt, and protect, even in a galaxy filled with dangers. By noon, they had returned to the safety of the hub. The hatchling, exhausted but alert, curled around his boots again, refusing to leave. Elias knelt down and gently stroked its back. Its glowing eyes met his, and in that moment, he knew what had happened. The little dragon had chosen him, not for food, not for shelter, but for trust, courage, and protection. Elias smiled softly, heart swelling with emotion. The galaxy was vast, cold, and dangerous, yet here, in this small corner of a dying colony, a man and a dragon hatchling had found each other. And somehow, in that fragile bond, the universe seemed a little less lonely, and human courage felt limitless. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs of the abandoned colony. Elias Kane walked slowly through the hub, the hatchling clinging to his shoulder. The little creature had been quiet for a while, resting after their morning journey, but now its glowing eyes followed him everywhere. Elias felt a strange sense of responsibility pressing on his chest. This small, fragile life depended entirely on him, and for the first time, he truly understood what it meant to be a guardian. He stopped at the center of the hub, a wide-open space with cracked metal floors and broken machinery. The twin suns reflected off the scattered panels, making the room shimmer with light. Elias set the hatchling gently on the floor. It blinked up at him, then took a cautious step forward. Its wings twitched, small but strong, and it hissed softly, not in anger, but as if it was trying to communicate. Elias knelt slowly, keeping his hands visible. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe with me." The hatchling looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, it crept closer and circled his feet, pressing its small body against his boots. Elias froze, feeling the warmth of the tiny dragon against him. The hatchling's glowing eyes met his, and in that silent stare, Elias understood something profound: the creature had chosen him. It was a choice he could not have expected, a bond that no human or alien could force. The hatchling had survived on its own, hidden in the canyon, but now it had declared him its guardian. It pressed closer, curling its tail around his ankle and resting its tiny head against his boot. Elias felt awe and pride mixing with a sharp edge of fear. This was no ordinary animal. This was a dragon, a being thought to exist only in legends, and it had trusted him completely. The moment was quiet, almost sacred. The hum of the colony seemed distant, and even the wind that usually swept across the plateau had softened. Elias crouched down, letting his hands hover just above the hatchling. It moved slightly under his touch, nuzzling against him. Its soft hisses turned into tiny chirps, and he laughed quietly. "So, it's official, then. You're mine, or maybe I'm yours," he said. For a long time, neither moved. The hatchling stayed curled around his feet, glowing faintly in the noon light. Elias felt a surge of emotions: joy, awe, fear, and a deep sense of purpose. He had lived alone on this planet, repairing machines and surviving in silence, but now he had a companion. Someone, or something, relied on him, trusted him, and had chosen him. It was a weight he had never known before, but it felt right. He stood slowly, keeping the hatchling in view. It did not move, did not run, did not even hiss. It simply watched him, eyes bright, tail curled protectively around his boots. Elias realized that the creature had made its decision, and there was no turning back. They were bound together now, human and dragon, in a strange corner of a cold galaxy. Elias walked across the hub, careful not to step on the hatchling. He carried supplies for it, water, scraps of food, and a blanket to keep it warm. The hatchling followed, keeping close to his feet, its small claws clicking softly on the metal floor. Every step he took, it matched, moving in perfect rhythm as if it understood his intentions. Elias marveled at its intelligence, at the way it seemed to read his thoughts without words. Outside, the plateau was bright and harsh under the twin suns. Dust swirled across the ground, and distant rocks shimmered in the heat. Elias led the hatchling to a quiet corner of the hub, where broken machinery created a small shelter from the wind. The little dragon climbed onto a low platform, looking back at him as if waiting for approval. Elias nodded gently. "Here's your spot," he said. It chirped softly and settled down, curling into a small, glowing ball of scales. For a while, Elias just watched it. The bond between them felt real, solid, and unbreakable. He realized that he had never felt this kind of connection before, not with other humans, not with anything else in the galaxy. This hatchling had chosen him, and in doing so, it had given him purpose beyond survival. He was no longer just an engineer on a dying colony, he was a guardian. The hours passed slowly. The hatchling rested, but its eyes remained alert, watching Elias as he moved about the hub. He repaired equipment, checked sensors, and even managed to clean some of the panels, all while feeling its presence at his feet. Each small chirp or twitch of its tail reminded him that he was not alone, that he had someone to protect, and that his courage mattered. As the sun reached its peak, Elias sat down on a crate, exhausted but happy. The hatchling climbed onto his lap, resting its small head against his knee. He stroked its soft, shimmering scales and smiled. The twin suns reflected off the creature's glowing body, making it shine like a jewel. In that moment, Elias understood that human courage was not just about survival. It was about connection, trust, and the willingness to take responsibility for something extraordinary. And in the quiet of the hub, with the dragon hatchling curled at his feet, Elias Kane felt something he had never known before: hope. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but together, they could face it. The bond had been declared, and the human and dragon were united, not by force, but by choice. The hatchling chirped softly, and Elias chuckled. "I promise, I won't let anything happen to you," he said. It was a small, simple moment, but it was enough. For the first time, he felt ready for the challenges ahead. They were not just surviving, they were beginning something new, something extraordinary. And so, under the noon sun, the dragon hatchling made its declaration. Elias Kane was its guardian, and nothing in the galaxy could change that. Elias Kane had just finished checking the last of the solar panels when a low hum echoed across the plateau. He froze, listening. The hatchling at his feet twitched its glowing tail and let out a sharp, warning chirp. Elias scanned the sky, squinting against the glare of the twin suns. At first, he saw nothing. Then, a faint glint of metal appeared far above the cliffs, moving too smoothly to be a bird or rock reflection. A scavenger drone. Elias's heart pounded. These drones were usually sent by rogue explorers or rival colonies, hunting rare creatures for profit. And now, it had found his hatchling. The small dragon hissed and pressed against his boots, its glowing eyes bright and alert. Elias swallowed hard. He knew the creature could not survive an encounter with a fully armed drone. It was up to him. He grabbed a piece of broken metal piping from the ground and motioned for the hatchling to follow him toward the rock formations that offered partial cover. The hatchling chirped softly and moved in perfect rhythm with his steps. Elias felt a surge of determination. He was alone, but he would not let anyone, or anything, harm the creature that had chosen him. The drone descended slowly, scanning the plateau. Its sensors glowed red, and tiny mechanical arms extended from its frame. Elias crouched behind a jagged rock, gripping the piping like a weapon. The hatchling huddled at his feet, wings slightly spread, ready to defend itself if necessary. Elias could feel its heartbeat, fast and fierce, and he realized something important: the hatchling trusted him completely. He could not fail. He peeked over the rock, studying the drone's movements. Its cameras rotated, scanning the terrain for signs of life. Elias needed a plan. With the colony systems mostly offline, he could not call for help. He had only his wits, the hatchling, and the tools at hand. A plan formed in his mind, one as risky as it was desperate. He would use the environment to his advantage. Elias crept toward a pile of old machinery near the edge of the plateau. The hatchling followed quietly, staying close. He positioned a large, rusted panel at the edge, balancing it against a rock. Then, with careful precision, he tied a loose cable from the panel to a jagged cliff edge. The drone moved closer, unaware of the trap. Elias's pulse raced, but he stayed calm. The hatchling chirped softly, as if urging him forward. When the drone reached the trap, Elias pulled the cable, sending the metal panel sliding down the slope. It hit the rocks below with a loud crash, kicking up dust and debris. The drone swiveled in surprise, sensors flashing red. Elias grabbed a nearby container of scrap fuel and flung it toward the drone. A small explosion erupted, startling it further. The hatchling hissed excitedly and flapped its tiny wings, its glow intensifying. Elias realized the creature was not just vulnerable, it was brave, and it had learned from him. The drone tried to advance, but Elias had more tricks ready. He guided the hatchling behind another rock while he positioned himself for a final move. Using a piece of broken metal tubing, he created a makeshift lever and pushed a large boulder down the slope. It rolled with crushing force, forcing the drone to retreat. Sparks flew as it skidded across the rocky surface. Elias held his breath as the machine reeled, then finally activated a self-defense protocol and shot a flare upward before retreating into the sky. Elias collapsed to the ground, breathing hard. The hatchling leapt onto his chest, nuzzling his neck, chirping softly. Its glow faded slightly as it calmed, and Elias stroked its scales gently. "You're safe now," he whispered. "They won't get you." The hatchling blinked at him, eyes bright and trusting. Elias felt a surge of pride and relief. He had protected it, outsmarted a dangerous machine, and survived. For a moment, Elias allowed himself to rest. The plateau was quiet again, save for the wind and the distant hum of the retreating drone. The hatchling curled around his boots, exhausted but alert. Elias realized something vital: human courage was not about strength alone, it was about quick thinking, strategy, and the willingness to risk everything to protect someone else. He had proved, to himself and to the galaxy, that humans could face danger and prevail, even against superior technology. As he looked at the little dragon, he noticed how it seemed to understand what had just happened. Its tiny head tilted, wings flicked, and it let out a soft, almost proud chirp. Elias laughed softly. "Yeah," he said, "we make a good team." The hatchling blinked at him, glowing faintly in the afternoon light, as if agreeing. Elias knew the threat was not gone forever. Other scavengers might return, or worse, someone might discover the hatchling's presence. But for now, they were safe. And he had learned something important: courage, cleverness, and trust could make humans stronger than even the deadliest machines. The twin suns began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the plateau. Elias carried the hatchling back to the hub, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. He had faced danger, protected the dragon, and survived. The little creature had chosen him as its guardian, and he had risen to the challenge. By the time they reached the safety of the hub, Elias felt a bond stronger than ever. The hatchling curled around his boots again, purring softly. Elias smiled, feeling pride, awe, and hope all at once. They were a team now, human and dragon, ready to face the challenges of a galaxy that had always seemed too vast and dangerous. And for the first time, Elias Kane truly understood what it meant to be a guardian, not just of a creature, but of courage, trust, and something extraordinary in a galaxy that had almost forgotten what humans could do. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Elias Kane stood at the edge of the plateau, looking out at the vast, empty world around him. The wind had calmed, and the twin suns were now low enough to cast long shadows across the rocks and machinery of the abandoned colony. At his feet, the dragon hatchling curled up, its glowing eyes watching him with quiet trust. Elias knelt and reached out, stroking its shimmering scales. "We made it through the day," he said softly. The hatchling chirped in response, a tiny, almost joyful sound. Elias smiled. It was amazing, he thought, that such a fragile creature could survive on this harsh planet, and that it had chosen him to protect it. The events of the day weighed on him. From the moment he had discovered the hatchling in the collapsed canyon to fending off the scavenger drone, his heart had raced, his mind had worked overtime, and his courage had been tested in ways he had never imagined. Yet through it all, he had learned something essential: humans were capable of more than survival. They could protect, adapt, and inspire trust, even in the most dangerous places. He looked down at the hatchling. It blinked slowly, its small body relaxed but alert. Elias realized that this bond was mutual. The hatchling had chosen him not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because he had shown care, courage, and ingenuity. In return, he had promised safety, warmth, and guidance. That was the essence of being a guardian. As the evening deepened, Elias carried the hatchling into the hub. The small creature explored the familiar corners, climbing over crates and investigating tools, but always returning to him when he called. Elias set up a small corner with blankets, scraps of food, and a soft bed of metal panels for it to rest. The hatchling curled into the nest, tail wrapping around itself, but still kept one eye on Elias. Sitting on a crate, Elias allowed himself to breathe and think. The colony was quiet, empty, and lifeless, yet it felt alive now. With the hatchling by his side, every shadow, every sound, every shift in the wind carried meaning. He was no longer alone. And more than that, he had purpose, protecting something extraordinary in a galaxy that often seemed indifferent to life. He thought about the scavenger drone that had chased them earlier. It had been clever, fast, and dangerous. But Elias had used his mind, not brute force, to overcome it. He had crafted traps, used the terrain, and relied on his instincts to protect the hatchling. That was what human courage looked like: quick thinking, resourcefulness, and the willingness to risk everything for someone else. The hatchling chirped again, hopping onto Elias's lap this time. He laughed softly, stroking its small head. Its scales glowed faintly in the dim light, a pulse of warmth and life that made the hub feel less like an abandoned place and more like home. Elias realized that the hatchling was more than a companion; it was a reminder of why humans fought, survived, and cared. Even in the vast, cold galaxy, connection mattered. Night fell completely, and the twin moons began to rise, casting pale light across the plateau. Elias and the hatchling watched together, the silence between them comfortable and full of meaning. He knew that dangers would come again. The scavengers might return, and there would always be other challenges on this lonely planet. But for now, they were safe, and they had each other. Elias whispered to the hatchling, "We'll face whatever comes next together." The little dragon chirped, nudging his hand, its glowing eyes full of trust. In that moment, Elias felt a deep sense of pride, not for what he had accomplished alone, but for the bond they had created. He was a human, small in the vast galaxy, yet capable of protecting something truly extraordinary. And the hatchling, in its way, had made him extraordinary too. As the night deepened, Elias and the hatchling curled up together in the corner of the hub. The stars above were countless, bright, and distant, yet he no longer felt insignificant. He had courage, intelligence, and a bond with a creature that had chosen him. That bond was proof that humans could not only survive but thrive, even in the coldest, most dangerous places. The hatchling yawned, wings folding neatly along its back, and Elias smiled. Tomorrow, they would explore more of the colony, repair more equipment, and perhaps uncover secrets left behind by the miners. But tonight, there was peace. He had earned the trust of the dragon, and it had given him something far greater in return: hope. Elias realized that the galaxy was vast, full of dangers, mysteries, and wonders beyond imagination. Yet humans had a way of leaving their mark, of standing firm in the face of threats, and of creating bonds that could withstand anything. He had proven that courage, cleverness, and care were more powerful than machines, more enduring than fear, and more important than survival alone. The little dragon chirped softly again, resting its head on his knee, and Elias whispered, "We're a team now. Nothing will break that." Its glowing eyes reflected the twin moons above, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a future that was bright, full of promise, and shared. Together, human and dragon hatchling sat in the quiet hub, guardians of each other and of the small corner of a galaxy that had brought them together. And in that moment, Elias Kane understood what it truly meant to be human: brave, resourceful, compassionate, and capable of extraordinary bonds that could change the course of a lonely, dangerous world. The night stretched on, and they slept side by side, a human and a dragon hatchling, ready for the adventures that awaited them beyond the plateau.